But I wanted to share something else first, just real quick. You know, Charlie Shamp prophesied over me a while back that dreams were going to go to a new level. So it's kind of cool. I was talking to Tony today, and we've had a similar experience just recently. But I had a dream last night where, Tony said it was an illegal alien spirit was trying to attack me, and the thing was, like grabbing a hold of me, trying to attack me. And so Jeff and Tony were coming at him with guns, which we know that was a spiritual thing. But Jeff literally shot the demon in the dream. And when that gun went off, Jeff and I both heard it in the natural. We sat up and went, "What was that?" And I said, "Well, I just had a dream where a gun went off." He said, "I heard it." Is that cool? I mean, we both heard it. And then Tony, tell what you...
Powerful.
Well, the other night, I was awakened around 2 o'clock with a dream that my basement was flooding. Now, we've had it happen before, the natural with the hot water heater. So, I'm sitting there going, no, it's not happening. It's not happening. Couldn't go back to sleep. Finally had to get up, and I even put on my flip-flops, not my house shoes, because I didn't want to get wet. So I walk down, walk around, walk in there, nothing dry. So it's like, okay, Lord, what are you saying? Well, when I get back upstairs, Kim is like, okay, where's Tony? Where'd you go? What happened? Where'd you at? And Katie comes out of a room saying, I'm hearing water run in the front half of the house. So Katie heard the water, I had the dream all at the same time. So it's definitely we're doing something different.
I thought that was kind of cool. So expect new levels in your dreams. I'm not sure exactly what my dream meant, but we both heard it. And I said, Jeff, you better go look through the whole house and see if something real. There was nothing. I mean, there's just nothing. We couldn't find a thing that sounded like that. So anyway, but so we were talking last time where we left off was fractures and parts and how people can pick up what we call riders on the bus. How do Christians get demons? And some people don't believe you can, but having a deliverance ministry, we can vouch for the fact that you definitely can. So we just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. So the first thing we realize is that a demon cannot access a spirit-filled Christian unless he has a right to be there or an open door, so to speak, right? So we'll talk about that more in a minute. But demons can occupy not only people, they can occupy places. They can occupy a house, they can occupy land. And how they do that is they feel like they have legal ground to do so. If you ever saw the movie Poltergeist back a long time ago, which I never watch movies like that now, and we'll talk about that too, but somebody built a house on top of an Indian burial ground, and those demons had legal right to be there. Jeff and I moved in a house once, and we started seeing things and hearing things, and the Lord spoke to us and said poltergeist spirit, which is just demons that make noise in the middle of the night. So we just anointed the place with oil and cast the things out, and it took a while to get rid of them entirely. But I was talking to the neighbor one day, and they said, did I ever tell you that the people that owned that house before moved out because it was haunted? And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, they heard noises in that house all the time, and they couldn't stand it. The man that built the house had cancer and died before it was finished, and they think it was his spirit haunting the house. So I just thought that was really interesting, but we just told the things to go, and they went, and that was pretty much the end of it. And I had a friend once whose husband was a warlock, and of course he'd gotten saved, but he was in jail when she met him. She had a prison ministry. He got out of jail and got back involved in witchcraft when he got out because his family were all witches, and he would go in the basement and do his spells and whatever. My friend was a very powerful prophetess, and she tried to fight all that stuff for years, but we went and prayed over the house several times, and we could sense what was going on, that man had given them legal ground, and she would tell us of stuff that was going on in the house. I said, you got to get out of the house, but she wouldn't, and one morning they came in, and bless her heart, she was dead. So she was really young when she died, and she refused to take the ground back, and she refused to leave the house. So stuff like that's real, and I'm saying this just to say it's real, not to scare you, but it is real. And if we don't know our enemy, we don't know how to defeat him. Is that correct? So we don't focus on the devil, and Jeff says it all the time. We don't want to focus on the devil, but if we don't know our enemy, just like if you're going into war, if you don't learn the scheme of the enemy, you're probably not going to defeat him, right? Okay. Another thing, kind of funny, demons can also possess animals. We know that from, just reading our Bible. Our pastor once, when Jeff and I first got married, Pastor Jerry Bryant, who was here this weekend, he's still a very good friend of ours, he said he was getting ready to go to church one day, and his cat stood up on its hind legs and said, you ain't going to church. I was like, okay, that's awesome. I mean, he said, I swear it just happened before I came here. And I said, if you can't cast the boogers out of the cat, I think I'd be getting rid of that cat. When my cats talk to me, people, we're gonna have a problem. So anyway, but demons seek to occupy us because that's where they have the most power. Animals, that's all funny. Houses, not so funny sometimes. But anyway, I'm going to kind of lean on my notes. Ephesians 4:27 says, give no place to the devil. And what the word place meant in the original word was topos, which I guess was like Greek, Hebrew, whatever, which means foothold. So the devil seeks to gain a foothold into our lives. What a foothold is, if you're opening the door, you stick your foot in, you can't shut the door stays open. So the devil's trying to stick his foot in, get a foothold where we can't shut the door, and then he can just gain easy access into our lives, right? So demons can only attach themselves to people if we break the laws of God. Well, that's a pretty big statement, break the laws of God. So we want to talk a little bit more about what does it mean to break the laws of God, because that can mean so many things. And some people say, well, I got into something because I didn't know any better. But unfortunately, ignorance doesn't matter when it comes to the devil, because he looks for every opportunity, and you not knowing any better and being ignorant doesn't seem to make a difference. You can even have these things come upon you because of your ancestors, which we'll talk about that real soon, but things that had nothing to do with you, things that happened before you were even born and that were spoken over your life, can definitely have a foothold in your life. So the demonic realm will use every ground possible, and the nature of the demonic kingdom is one of darkness and deception. They're always looking to fool you. That's why the courts of heaven is so important. If you haven't heard the message of the courts of heaven, it is so important to your freedom. If you didn't come last time, you really need to come to this next conference. We've learned so much just by hearing Robert talk about how to take back what's been stolen from us. So I just wanted to say that too. So the process of deliverance, Kim and Tony can talk more about that. It's not about just casting out demons. There's a lot of deliverance ministers that can just say, come out, you foul spirit. That works, but if you don't find out how the spirits got there, you're really not going to stay free very long, and they're going to come right back. So the real point of deliverance is to find out how they gain access, deal with that, and then it's easy to get rid of them. You just take control over how they got there, and they have to go. They don't have a choice. So we're going to go over some of the main, we can call them portals, you can call them doorways, places of entry that a demon would have into our life. So we've kind of marked the top 10 here. The first one I've got marked is generational iniquity. When you go to the doctor, doesn't the doctor ask for your medical history? Well, what did your parents have, your grandparents? Did anybody have cancer, high blood pressure? They're wanting to know this because our DNA impresses upon who we are what might tend to follow us physically or mentally, right? If you apply for life insurance or health insurance, they're going to ask you what your family history is, because that has influence over your life. But everything in the physical only imitates what's in the spiritual, right? So if we can get things from our forefathers in the physical that our parents, forefathers did, said, lived in, can affect us in that way. So if your daddy was an alcoholic, you might be an alcoholic, not only because you have the physical DNA that would make you predisposed to that, but also the devil's going, oh, I got this one. Not only did that child live with that demonic spirit its whole life, but spiritually you're predisposed to that because of the sins of your fathers. Nehemiah would not only pray for his sins to be cast out, but also the sins of the foremothers and forefathers. So I'm going to let y'all expound on that.
And I can talk to you about this because I lived it. My dad he drank, wasn't an alcoholic per se, but he drank. His father drank, but it was just what you did as a man. Having a beer here or there wasn't a big deal. But somewhere along the line, it takes hold of you because it's a spirit. The liquor stores have spirits, alcohol, the spirits. It's real. They advertise it. It is connected to a much deeper thing, though. We drink most of the time because we're medicating something. Like Jan was saying, if you don't get to the root, it doesn't go away. You can fight it, but the desires are not gone, and the reason it got in is not gone. When I was going through all the AA stuff and all that, they said the worst person to be around was a dry drunk. somebody being forced not to drink. It's not because they don't want to, they just don't know how to stop. You have to fix why before you can fix the how in this situation. But it's one of those things that, we all say, well, I'm Irish, I have an Irish temper. That's a curse that's been spoken in your family line. If I look back in my family line, there's probably somebody back in the old days that brewed beer for the town or something. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't find that. But they made an agreement, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to make money. But it's all about coming into agreement with what the enemy's doing. He cannot create, we create. He needs us to create our scenario. It's a hard, I heard this for years before it ever made sense to me. You create your own environment. If you don't like your environment, change what you're saying. And it's real. It changes our disposition for how we see things, perceive things, and feel about things. If you're always saying, I'm stupid, I'm never going to amount to anything, I'm never going to go anywhere, I'm never going to be it. See, those are things I heard all my life growing up. I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to be anything. I'm never going to get anywhere. That was what I was heard every time I went to school. And even in school I heard it. But my disposition was, yeah, really? Let me show you what I'm going to do. But that's not normal for most people. And here she goes, grabbing the microphone from me again.
Listen, would you say that's a spirit of rebellion? See that vow we made, I'll never. No, that's a bad idea. You don't want to do that. We're going to talk about that in a second. I do want to say one thing. Because I'm seeing it more and more, say you have a disposition for, I'm going to use alcoholism. Your family's got a disposition for alcoholism, right? Just because it doesn't manifest in your life, doesn't mean it won't manifest in your children's life. Does that make sense? It might manifest in a different way. Addiction's addiction. It might not be alcoholism, it may be pot. It may be workaholism, it may be exerciseaholism. Some kind of sex, pornography. Does that make sense? It will find a place to light. Does that make sense? So if there's something there, you want to shut those doors. And generationally, we know that there's some serious challenges with the Druids and the Masonic. Those generations purposely take curses down to the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They take rights, and that's so if you've got a poverty thing going on, check your family line. You probably got somebody stole your stuff generations past. Does that make sense? So, but you're always going to find that spirit's waiting. If it doesn't get you, watch your kids, because I'm telling y'all, we tell our children, guys, you will have a propensity for this. You have got to be careful. Don't think you're going to get away with it, because the enemy is waiting for a foothold. Remember? Do you guys remember the analogy with the turret he talked about last time? Remember the turret? The turret's a castle. Remember the round thing on a castle? The Lord showed me. He said, your life, he showed me this beautiful turret with bricks that were out about 1/4 inch. And it was a really pretty pattern. And he said, honey, your whole job is to get those, every one of those is a lie and a foothold of the enemy. Like Jim was talking, there was a foothold of the enemy on every one of those bricks. When the lie is removed, that brick becomes flush with the other bricks. No longer a foothold. Your life's journey is to get rid of all the lies you believed. And he started talking to me about, that's the scripture that the Lord was talking about, or he reminded me, Jesus said, remember, the enemy has no hold in me, he's got no hook in me. He didn't have those things. He didn't have those lies or those strongholds. We do, because of our raising, because of things that are said over us, because of the way we perceive things. Those are all strongholds and footholds.
Exactly. My grandmother had serious panic attacks, fear issues. My mother had panic attacks. My brother had panic attacks. I had panic attacks. My son had panic attacks. Of course, the Lord delivered me and my son because we're born again and set free. But that's just a good example of not only is that a physical thing that can be inherited, it's also spiritual, because all of us lived with the spirit of fear surrounding us all the time as we were growing up. Just a reality. If your parents or your family struggled in the occult, or if they dabbled in the occult, there are very intentional things, like she said, that are spoken over your life. You're probably going to need some, pretty deep deliverance, because those things can really talk about a foothold. We've seen so many people really struggle just to come out from under that. Number 2, patterns of sin or habits of sin. That goes without saying. If you're living your life in sin, pretending to be a Christian, whatever. We all struggle with things, but if you're intentionally living a life of sin, you're an open door. Period. I don't know if y'all want to add to that, but that just kind of goes without saying.
And it's also that place where if you have a habit, a cycle, or, we've had people that every 3 years, this is what happens to me. Every Halloween, this is what happens to me. Every New Year's, that's a cycle. Now, is it your sin? We don't know until we really get praying for you. But the generational sin can come in that manner. It shows up in a cycle or something you can't stop. And that opens up a whole lot of things there.
Okay, so we don't need to, everybody knows if you're living in sin, what could happen. So, number 3, bitterness and unforgiveness. And I witnessed this in my own brother. My own brother got so bitter because he couldn't forgive my dad for his sins that bitterness ate him alive. And literally, he was just, I say he's probably one of the meanest people I've ever known. Still is. He's laying in the nursing home over here as a result of bitterness and unforgiveness because he couldn't let it go. And he's over there now and is not in his right mind. And he's still just mean and nasty. Hits the nurses, cusses, swears, and I got to take care of him. That's fine, I'll do it. But it's a direct result, and I watched it happen over years. He could not forgive, and it ate him alive. He even had stomach cancer, which is, a lot of people you see with stomach cancer is a result of unforgiveness. I've seen it more than once, and he had stomach cancer. So, Hebrews 12:15 says, bitterness will defile. You need to always strive to forgive. It's not for them. Again, it's for you so that you can be free.
Resentment and those things. Henry Wright wrote a book called A More Excellent Way, and he has had a revelation from the Lord about each one of the stripes that Jesus took was for an infirmity, which was connected to an emotional place where you were either bitter, resentful, angry. Every one of them had a physical manifestation. And he's proven it over and over again with ministry, healings. And it really just validates that statement, pure heart, clean hands. We have to really watch our emotional state so that we stay out of sin.
I will say, don't forget, you can forgive everybody, but you got to forgive yourself too. Exactly. And that's the one thing we find more and more often. That's when I get people to repeat after me, they will choke up every time at forgiving themselves. Because they can forgive somebody else, but they're their hardest, worst enemy. So Jesus already forgave you 2,000 years ago. You just have to receive his forgiveness and forgive yourself.
I'm hearing the Lord tell me, one of the biggest stumbling blocks a lot of us carry is a spirit of self-hatred. And it's the fact that we can't forgive ourselves. That spirit, and you may go, I don't hate myself, I like myself. It's a spiritual thing, you may not even recognize it, but that spirit of self-hatred is a huge open door to attract demons. I mean, it just is. It can cause all matter of disease, infirmity, emotional distress. So thank you, Lord, for saying that. Bitterness and unforgiveness can lead to number 4, rebellion. If a person is so bitter, angry, even teenagers that suffer rebellion have some kind of bitterness issue, some kind of anger issue. They're mad at their parents, they're mad at their school, they don't like being told what to do. It all has an underlying basis of bitterness somewhere in there. Proverbs 17:11 says the person that rebels, a cruel messenger will be sent against them. That's pretty thick. 1 Samuel 15:23 says rebellion is as the spirit of witchcraft. So that scripture actually says rebellion is as serious as the sin of divination and fortune telling, and disobedience is as serious as false religion and idolatry. So, yeah. Okay. Number 5, this one, I know this, but do we really think of this? An entry point for the demonic is lying. Wow. Do you know when you tell one lie, you come into agreement with the father of lies, and he has access to you instantly? And if you tell one lie, you notice people who have a lying spirit have to continue lying. They tell one lie to cover up the other, and it's not so much just that they caught up in their own web of deception, but it's a spirit, and spirits tend to increase if you don't do anything about them. So if you open your door to that spirit, you're probably going to be a liar. Isaiah 28:15 says, when we tell a lie, we come into agreement with demonic spirits and the spirit of death. Because you've said, we've made a covenant with death and with Sheol, the place of the dead. We have made an agreement. When the overwhelming scourge passes by, it will not reach us, for we have made lies our refuge and concealed ourselves in deception.
And I would just say one thing here, it's not just about lying. The enemy is a copycat. So what does he do? He acts like Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You don't just get one spirit of lying. You get his friends that come with him. So you don't really know what demon's going to be behind what door when you open it. And it's the easy things. It's the, I just don't want to tell her how that looks on her. I don't want to tell him his breath stinks. When you get in those places where even the polite lies will catch you up, because sometimes we just need to be polite and not say the hard things, but slip somebody a mint. Say you got a little salad in your teeth. You may get the idea to go look in the mirror and you smell your own breath. But we've got to be careful what we do tell people. There is that place where we need to be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove, but we have to understand what we're doing when we do it. If I'm telling you something just because it's going to make me feel like I didn't hurt you, that's wrong. But if I need to tell you something, I need to do it out of relationship and feel like I'm not persecuted. You can say anything in love when you're in relationship with people and you really care about them. And it's not the little things that get us, it's the big things. No, it's the little things that get us. The word says the small foxes get into the chicken coop. So we have to watch out of the little things. And we've taken lying just to, be politically correct. And that's not what we're supposed to do.
And I don't know why the Lord's having me say this here, but he's reminding me, lies, deception, they all kind of go together. Remember, first they go to families. They group in families of three. So they're in families of three, so lying, deception, all that. Remember, the enemy always comes as a bringer of light and bringer of truth. Double check anything you're hearing. Just double check it. Bouncing off godly people. Don't assume what you're hearing it's just wise counsel. Bring stuff to wise counsel. Check what you're hearing, because he's really going to talk to me about that today. So just make sure you know that you're hearing the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Of course, number 6, just we're trying to kind of go through these because we want to kind of open it up at the end, but involvement in the occult. I mean, that just goes without saying. God wants us connected to him. God is a spirit. He made us for spiritual experience, but how many grew up and weren't taught what we're teaching you now? I never heard any of this stuff. I've always been a very spiritual person. I knew that there was more than what I was being told. So I went after Ouija boards and tarot cards, and I just knew there was so much more, but because I didn't know how to channel that, I got off into the other side. Now, thank God, what I experienced by delving in those things scared the snot out of me, and I went, whoa, because there was manifestations. When you call upon demonic spirits, they will come, and it's not always friendly and happy. So I was a teenager doing this stuff, and I got scared, and I went, I'm never touching that again, because we were playing with the Ouija board, and it was talking, and I said, oh my gosh, who are you? And it spelled out Satan. I went, I'm done. But one of the reasons people tap into the occult is because they know there's more. But another reason is they start to gain power from it. And that's where it gets really dangerous. There's one thing to tap into it because you know it exists. But when you start to get power from it and you like that power, that's when it gets really dangerous. And that does happen to some people. Whereas Jesus is the king of the kingdom of light, Satan is the king of the kingdom of darkness. And if you, like we've been saying, if you like that power, he's going to give it to you, and he doesn't care what it does to you. The Lord doesn't always give us unlimited power because he doesn't want us to get hurt, or he's a good daddy. He limits what he gives us. There's so many things that we have access to, but that doesn't mean it's legal or you should do it. But the devil doesn't care. He'll just give you whatever you ask for and then just sit back and let you die. He doesn't care. A lot of people that get deep into that stuff, it starts with something simple like Harry Potter. They might think that's so innocent. Oh, I can get past that, but then they sort of get addicted to it. And it kind of happened with one of our kids once. The school demanded that they read Harry Potter, and I said, no, and that won't happen. So I went to bat with the school board and said, you can't make kids read books about witchcraft if their parents don't want them to. Well, I won, but because we forbid him to read it, he got curious about it. And he really got kind of addicted to Harry Potter, and I thank the Lord he broke that off of him at some point. But he was the first one to stand in line when the Harry Potter movies came out, and we were kind of shocked, but it's because he gave himself to it. And you give yourself to something, it can become an addiction. Does that make sense? So there's two kinds of occult: divination, which is fortune telling, trying to find out our future from the devil and not the Lord. There's the prophetic, and then you've got the pathetic, which is the divination part. Crystal balls, tarot cards, Ouija boards, stuff like that. Not calling on the Lord, but calling on any spirit that will answer. And like I said, if you call out for an answer, you're going to get it from somewhere if it's not done in the Lord. The other form of the occult is sorcery, which is trying to gain power from demonic spirits. We're going to talk about movies in a minute, but Hollywood loves to dress up the occult and make it look so attractive and so innocent. If we know something's the devil, we're probably going to go, no, I don't think that feels right. But Hollywood knows how to make it look so innocent so that we let our children watch stuff because it doesn't look bad. Oh, that's just cute. There's nothing wrong with that. And the enemy's very strategic with that. And I wish we could have Hope here tonight, but she's out of town, just to tell us how strategic he is with all that stuff. It's very real. Okay. I was going to say one thing that's become really popular over the years that we didn't have when I was a kid is like virtual role-playing or fantasy games. One that was mentioned was World of Warcraft, where you actually enter in like you're actually a character and all this stuff. I really think a lot of these mass murders going on are people that just get so addicted to this stuff that they don't know the truth from a lie anymore. They don't know reality from non-reality. They get so caught up, and then the demonic just sweeps them away. And we were talking about kids playing games, which is one thing that really concerns me, having children. And I wanted to bring up Minecraft. I don't really see a lot of people in here that have children that play games, but my kids, especially my son, likes to play video games. And we did a little research on Minecraft. I never got a good feeling about it. Anytime I would look at it, I just thought, that's not right. And my son got on it one day because another child led him into it. And I looked at it and went, oh my gosh, what are you playing? And he said, it's just Minecraft. All the boys play it. And there was there was blood flying everywhere, and there was demons trying to attack you and trying to kill you. And I thought, I'm sorry, but this is not good. So I actually looked it up, and here's one description of it. Think of it as grown-up Legos, except it's filled with things that want to kill you. Do we want our kids to play games where things are trying to kill them, or where you have the opportunity to kill yourself? I mean, it seems innocent, but one thing I found as well is when you're playing this game, there's pop-ups, and kids will click on those pop-ups, and these pop-ups are not filtered, and they will take your kid into a realm that you just don't want them going in. There's also a realm in Minecraft that's described as hell, where you get to go into hell, and there's witchcraft and sorcery and magic, and I mean, this stuff, I've seen it, I've watched it and went, oh my gosh, this stuff is just bad. So we just need to really be careful what our kids are doing and looking at. I know Tony's going to take off on that a little bit while we're on it.
How many of you remember the shooting at Columbine High School?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember what they attributed the kids that went in there shooting from? I mean, even the military got involved in it. The video game Doom. It's a first-person shooter, and they said it was excellent at desensitizing people to shooting somebody else with ease. The military wanted it, and our kids are playing it, and they've got levels of it, but it's first-person shooter, and it's reality to them. I mean, it's the visuals are just so real, but it just numbs you to the, I killed somebody. Well, so what? It's just a game. the enemy wants us to look at a lot of these things and it's just a game, it's just TV, it's just movies, and we'll get that one in a minute.
Okay, so, yeah, we'll come back to movies. Number 7 remains an open wound throughout your life, and you never really got inner healing. It's like an open wound that attracts flies. You got to get that thing healed. And you know, there's other, like I said, there's different kinds of rejection. We can also categorize trauma in rejection as well. People experience traumatic experiences, like let's just say even a car wreck. If you have a car wreck and it inflicts tremendous trauma on you, and you have this feeling that somehow you're not good enough for God to protect you, that God himself has rejected you, you actually develop a soul tie to that trauma. You come into agreement with that trauma, so that it's like an entry point for the enemy to constantly use that trauma to tell you you're rejected. God didn't love you enough to protect you. And then you can carry the wounds from that trauma for years. Like you could hurt your leg in this car wreck and it just never be healed because you feel like you weren't worthy of being saved. Does that make sense? I know that's kind of a deep thing. But a lot of spirits of infirmity are connected to rejection and trauma because you feel like if you're not good enough for your family to love you, or if you're not good enough for God to protect you, then, you know, that's just like a major point that the enemy goes, oh, well, I'm going to step in on that one.
I do want to say here, we see it all the time. The enemy, you guys know he's not creative. He doesn't have any creative bone in his body. He copycats everything. And so he uses the same lies over everybody in some form or fashion. One of them is, you're not good enough. You're not enough of something. Skinny enough, tall enough, talented enough, whatever enough. You're never enough. It's always about value and worth. Does that make sense? It can, when you get down to the root of it, it's most often going to be about your value and your worth, okay? Some other real true lies he always uses, he goes after fear. Is a huge one. He comes at you early with fear. There's just certain ones you'll see over and over and over again. But the one about rejection and your value and your worth is huge. We see it almost every single time in some form or fashion.
Absolutely. And here again, we're kind of moving on. We'd be glad to expound on some of these things at the end. Number 8, ungodly beliefs. Well, here again, that can encompass so many categories of things. Legalism is an ungodly belief. The spirit of religion. The Lord spoke to me once and said, the spirit of religion or legalism is the spirit of the Antichrist. Well, the Antichrist, wouldn't that be the enemy? For sure. I've seen people's lives destroyed because they cannot get past legalism. They get so caught up in the rules and the regulations and the laws that there's no grace, and it destroys their lives. So that's one form of an ungodly belief. And another one I found that I thought was interesting. If you grow up in a spirit of poverty, if your family's really poor, and I've seen this as well, the parents are always going, we can't afford it, we can't afford it, you can't have that, we can't afford it. And the child grows up hearing that, they grow up to believe that. That is an ungodly belief because God says we are more than conquerors and he is our provider, and that we will always have what we need. But if you hear that lie spoken to you throughout your whole life, you start to believe it. So a child will grow up and they'll start to steal because they think, well, if I'm always going to be poor, I'll just get it however I can get it. Or they'll live off other people. You know, they'll expect other people to support them and take care of them. Or they'll be workaholics and they never have peace in their life because they work so hard thinking, I'll never have enough. So a spirit of poverty is a lie, and it is an ungodly belief. Y'all may have some good examples of that as well.
I think one of the best ones we see is we're never going to be. It doesn't matter what it is, but I'm never going to be. Because the enemy doesn't want you to understand who you are. It's all about your identity. Because if you don't ever think you're going to measure up to what God made you to be, how can you get there? But he likes to bookend you. Well, you're never going to succeed. But if you do succeed, you're going to sin. So he keeps you trapped between do I or don't I? Because if he can keep you stuck, you're not going to do it. But when you see yourself getting to that place where you're starting to see the promotion, every time you see a promotion coming, you do something to sabotage it, then you've got some challenges on the inside in a belief system that won't let you move forward. And the enemy loves that because he nags the daylights out of you. And said, well, I just don't deserve it. I'm not worthy of that. I'm not supposed to do that. Because those are things you'll hear to keep you kind of stifled and stuck where you're at.
You're going to find, this is probably they would call this, you realize that when you have lies, that's a deliverance thing, right? Anytime they call that, it's not the authoritative version of deliverance, but a lot of the other ministries use lie-based thinking to a form of deliverance. If you go after the lies, there's usually riders attached. More often than not, you've got riders attached to the lie because they come at the moment of trauma and they attach with the belief system. Does that make sense? So if you'll deal with the lie, they lose ground and they have to go. So you don't necessarily have this big woo-hoo, no manifestation. It's not like that. You'll cry probably because you finally believe the truth about who you are. But once you deal with the lie, it frees you up. So you're going after the lies. They're in your head. Remember, you believe them. And a lot of times, one of the other things we see quite often is you got great parents. They did a great job. Something happened. The lie was perceived. The lie was something. I'll give you a great example. A friend of mine, well, I'll tell you who it is, but somebody I love dearly, their mom and dad got pregnant with the second child. Well, that child believed that they were replaced because they weren't loved. Apparently they weren't good enough because they needed another baby to come take that place for the mom and dad's heart. Now that was never said. Those parents loved that daughter, but they just wanted more than one. Does that make sense? And so, but it was a perceived lie. The enemy doesn't care. He will do whatever to drown up thoughts in your mind to make you believe a lie. And so that's just one of the many examples.
And one of those two, this kind of goes into the next category, which is curses as well. But almost everybody I've ever counseled who struggled with the spirit of homosexuality felt rejection from the womb, that their parent did not want the sex that they are. Like, well, my parents wanted another girl and I was a boy and they didn't want me, so that baby's born trying to be a girl. I saw this in my very own niece. The first child that they had was a girl. The daddy walked out of the hospital and said, I didn't want a girl, I wanted a boy. So the mother immediately started trying to have a boy. She got pregnant again within 3 months, and that one was a girl. In the womb, that baby was being told, you gotta be a boy, you gotta be a boy. That baby was born trying to be a boy. She would never wear girls' clothes, ever. Wouldn't put a dress on, hated girls' clothes, hated girls' toys, and nobody taught her this stuff. It was just in her. And she is homosexual to this day. She's been that way. She was not born gay. This is where the deception comes in. Nobody's born that way. It's just her spirit believed a lie in utero. Does that make sense? So almost everybody I've prayed for has said, yeah, my parents did want the opposite sex. So just want to throw that
I want to jump in here because the other thing we find there is if it wasn't an in utero issue, which I have to share my testimony on that. If it wasn't an in utero issue, there was an assault on that child at a really young age. Yeah. They may not even remember it, and most of the time they don't. That made them afraid or whatever. And so a lot of times when you get the healing, so it's usually an assault on them as a young child or an in utero issue. So our thing with, so I'll tell you, y'all know my Katie. I'm telling on her. You guys know my Katie. Well, I made a mistake. I'm just going to tell you the truth. My Katie was so different carrying her. She was a different kid. She was high where my other one was low. She was wide where the other one wasn't. She was just different in every way as my first child. So I assumed, which was, you never want to do that, I made the assumption it was a boy. Because I didn't do the testing. We didn't pay for all that. Back then they didn't. Unless there was a reason medically, they didn't do tests for if it was a boy or girl. So we just let it go. We wanted to be surprised. So, but I assumed it was a boy because she carried so differently. So when the doctor asked me when she was born, I said, it's a boy, right? Or he said, well, what do you want? I said, it's a boy, right? And she was a girl. But in her, the whole time, I thought she was a boy. And so she struggled early on with being the tomboy, being the rough, the tumble, the fighter, the aggressor. She wrestled boys in middle school and won. I mean, she was tough. It wasn't until she hit her teenage years and we started really getting some healing in that area for her. But I didn't do it on purpose. Does that make sense? I just thought it was the opposite of what I already had. So that's how it happens. It could be as innocent as that. It's not necessarily purposeful information.
Exactly, that's good. Number 9, curses. Other people speaking word curses over you, which there's so many forms of that. You know, growing up as a kid, I was fat. I was told, you're fat, you're ugly, you know. So my first response was, don't eat anymore. So I was anorexic and struggled with eating disorders because I was word cursed my whole youth, you know. Plus my dad left my mom for a skinny woman. My mom was chubby. So I grew up thinking, oh, it must be really bad to be a little bit chubby, so I must be skinny to be loved and accepted. But that was a word curse that was spoken over me, and my daddy actually acted it out and rejected me as well. So it had nothing to do with my size, but that was the lie. Again, goes back to the lie. Other people can curse. You can curse yourself. You speak curses over yourself by saying, I'm ugly, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And there's so many curses you can speak over yourself. The words we say are powerful. We need to always profess who we are in the Lord and who He wants us to be, not the lies from the enemy. And that's for each individual person to weigh out. Curses can also occur from touching unclean things. We went to Cancun once and thought we were going to have a great time. And weird stuff happened when we got there, just completely weird. And we were trying to explain, why is everything here weird? I was in the gift store at the hotel one day, and objects were flying off the shelves and hitting me, and I did not touch them. And the owner of the store came up and said, you got out of my store. And I said, I didn't touch any of this stuff. And at that moment, a piece of pottery from the very top shelf, I watched it flew down and busted my toe wide open. I got sun poisoning while I was there. We lost a bunch of money. We couldn't find our ticket to get back to the airplane. I mean, it was just one thing after the other. I finally went, God, what is going on? He said, there's over 300 demonic spirits here. They know who you are, and they knew you were coming. And I went, oh. Now, the money we lost while we were there, we found in our Bible. It just mysteriously appeared back in our Bible a few months after we got home. So God gave that back to us. But I kind of said, I don't think I want to go back there. But, you know, we just need to take seriously when we walk into somebody else's territory. There could be a curse that would come upon us. We just need to be prayed up and make sure when you go somewhere that God said you could go there. We flippantly go places. So that doesn't mean you have to pray every time you go to Walmart, but I'm talking about going into other I know people that do that, going into other nations, that kind of thing. So,
A couple of years ago, Jeff was going to Haiti, and he kept looking at me going, you're going to Haiti with me? And I said, no, I'm not going to Haiti. I mean, it was like for 3 or 4 weeks, every time he was up, he looked at me and goes, you're going to Haiti. I finally said, yes, I'm going to Haiti. And everybody kind of looked at me like, you're going to Haiti? You're crazy, aren't you? Well, I get there thinking it's all this spiritual, demonic stuff. What? But I had about 10 or 15 people praying for me while I was there. Now, yes, we ran into the people in the streets where their eyes changed colors and weird sounds came out of them. I mean, yeah, those things happen. But it wasn't like the stories I heard from other people who've been to Haiti and all this junk happened. But it is a place of knowing where you're going. You know, somebody said something, well, aren't you really scared? I said, I'm going with a team of dead raisers. Why am I going to worry? You know? No. But I went there understanding what I was going there for and what I was coming against. And I even took some prayers with me. The Lord told me, you can't use those here. I'm like, well, what can I use? And I had to get Kim to email me some stuff from the house just to keep my space and me clean and prayed up for, because every territory has different things over it. Every land mass has something different. You know, when we were in Vietnam, the war we couldn't win, the people from Vietnam came back for curse on them. They'll never find peace. That's why they always wandered and never settled, because that was a curse on the land on them for being there.
yeah. And so what we find too is from taking teams into other countries, when we take people and they got riders on the bus and they don't get clean of that before they go, they're going to manifest when they come to some of these countries. So if you're going to Peru, see Tony and Kim before you go. Because I'm serious. We've had some trips that were doozies of, you know, people that just go and they've got issues when they go, and then it ends up being a nightmare. So last one, number 10.
I want to say one other thing about curses. Make sure, because we think about self-cursing. I want to just say this. The Lord told me one day, you've got to quit doing that. And I went, what? He said, you keep replaying those tapes that were said over you your whole life. You're this, you're that, you're this. And he's telling me to remember to tell you. Remember the Lord always talks in second or third person. He is always talking to you or about you, right? He never talks as you. The enemy always talks as you. So you think it's yourself. And you'll say it because you think it's you. That's not you. That's the enemy. Okay? So remember that. He's always talking as you. So I would keep saying those same things. And one day he said, honey, you've got to quit cursing yourself so I can bless you. But it made me stop and realize how much I was actually saying, oh, you're so stupid, or Kim, you're whatever. And I still get caught. Kimberly will go, hey, stop it. Because it's something you've heard all your life, and you're saying it before you realize it. So break the tapes. That's part of what freedom is about. Inner healing and freedom is break the tapes of all those things you heard your whole life.
That's really, really good. That'll preach right there. It's a whole sermon right there. Number 10, transference. Which again, like we could just go on for hours about this stuff, but there's so many ways that demons can be transferred into you. Number 1 is movies. I personally do not see R-rated movies. That's just my conviction. If you don't have that conviction, please don't get mad at me. But there was times when Jeff and I had gone to see movies way in the past where we went, okay, it's rated R because it's got a little violence in it, we can probably handle it. We walk in, sit down, the first scene is almost like pornography, and we're like, okay, we're out of here. I've just learned if it's rated R, in this day and time, rated R is so much worse than it was when I was a kid. And I just don't take that chance. So I just don't allow that into my eye gates. We have eye gates and ear gates. You don't know what the enemy's put in those movies, and Hope will tell you movies are encoded demonically so that that stuff goes into you. Now, I'll give you a real good example of that. A member who used to be on our staff here, great person, great staff member, did a wonderful job. Everybody loved this person. When we first brought the deliverance team here to do training, they wanted to go through the deliverance because we required all of our staff to do it. Not that we were guinea pigs, we just some of the worst they had ever seen. So we're sitting down with this guy going, okay, you're on staff, what are you hiding? Come to find out, he and his girlfriend thought it was funny to watch zombie movies. They were obsessed with zombie movies, watched them all the time. They would even make casual jokes about it. And I never really picked up on it. I would just go, you're not serious. You don't seriously watch that stuff. But they did. And all this came out in the deliverance, but it was bad. I mean, we're not talking just a little flinch. We're talking, I mean, it was bad. So, we could preach for an hour on movies, but just know that there's stuff strategically put in movies. I mean, I could go into Disney and all the subliminal messages. We just, for the point of time, we don't have time for that. He's going to talk a little bit more about that. Alcohol and drugs. Demons can transfer when you're drinking. Drugs are an entry point. Drugs are a spiritual thing. They open us up to the demonic. It's just the truth. I read an article saying that pot was one of the worst. They're legalizing it everywhere, but it's one of the worst spiritual drugs there is. Actually, this is so funny. I was looking at the article. You know, one of those little circles with the line, which means no. It had that and a pot leaf. And my 4-year-old looked at that and said, that means no weed. And I was like, how did you know? Like, he seems like he can read. And I went, how did you know that said weed? And he said, well, look at it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was today. I was so freaked out about that. And then finally he went, it's a leaf. And I went, but you said weed. And it actually said demon weed. And I'm like, okay, this boy is just very spiritual. So anyway, Tony.
I'm going to share something I don't think you know about.
Ah.
The person that had that deliverance that you were talking about, gave Kim and I a portable DVD player. And I just set it down in the living room, didn't think anything about it. Boy, that was a rough week at our house. And once we finally honed in on it and prayed over it, I asked him later, I said, hey, the DVD player you gave you, what you used to do with it? Oh, I sat in the garage and watched zombie movies on it. We had no idea. Now that's a transference. I love movies, I do. But I'm going to tell you, if you want to see what the enemy's doing, watch movies.
That's right.
Watch some of these crazy TV shows.
Very strategic.
I like superheroes, I did. I went to see Wolverine, the original, when it came out with my daughter and son-in-law. And we're sitting there in the trailers, and this music starts playing. My spirit's going, whoa, what's this? I get to a point, No, I've seen some stuff, you know. Movies don't bother me like they bother Kim. I'm wired differently, first off. But they don't bother me like they did Kim. But about, a few moments into this movie, I start praying in my prayer language because of what I could feel coming off the screen. Now, by the time the trailer ended, I had my eyes closed and I was praying pretty loud. So when the crescendo came and everything kind of stopped, my daughter starts elbowing me. Dad, stop, stop. Because the whole theater could hear me at that point. But it's that place where they get us. How many of you understand subliminal teaching or training or messaging? You know, the movie theaters used to do it years ago, like every 10th frame they put popcorn, candy, Cokes to make you go buy it. Well, now they've gotten even more sophisticated. They embed it in your movies.
It's true.
And Bill had to leave, but I got a picture I was wanting to show you, but it shows how they break apart film with the sound at the top and bottom, and then they layer in the symbols. And I found this on a movie, because they were talking about military training of this one person that got triggered watching a cartoon. And they went into a destructive scenario, but it was the triggering of the cartoon character that was embedded in this commercial. We really don't understand what they're feeding us over TV, movies, you know, even music. One of my favorite groups from the 70s, I've had to kind of get away from because their initials actually stand for Kings in Service of Satan.
I saw them in person.
Many
We won't
times.
go there. We won't go. Well, when I was young and I was delving in the occult and I was doing the Ouija boards and all that, I really loved, I mean, it's horrible, but I listened to Black Sabbath music. I did. Ozzy Osbourne. I didn't know, nobody sat down with me and said, that's horrible. Nobody knew, and everybody was listening to that stuff. And I was listening to this one day while I was a little stoned. I'm just being real. And there was a voice, I'm being real, people. There was a voice that said, kill yourself and you'll be free. Kill yourself and you'll be free. I've told the story before. You won't have to be in bondage anymore. I could literally hear it coming through the music. It wasn't literally on there. It was a spiritual thing. I have scars on my hand to this day where I tried to kill myself. When this voice said, kill yourself and you'll be free. Thank God my mom knocked on the door and said, what are you doing in there? And I snapped out of it. And I looked down and there was blood dripping from my hand. I was in a trance. That's how powerful music is. You know, you heard of backmasking, Black Oak, Arkansas. You play it backwards. What does it say?
Get all your toys back. I never did that one.
Jeff and I did it once, just because we didn't believe it. We did it and heard it, and it's like, you know, all hail Satan or something when you play it backwards. So music is, that's why Satan was over the music in heaven, and when he fell, that's the first thing he perverted was music. So we need to be very careful what we're listening to, very careful what we let our children listen to. Again, we could preach for an hour on movies and music, but y'all get the point. You just have to ask the Holy Spirit, is this okay? If it doesn't feel okay, turn it off. My kids will do that. They'll go, this does not feel okay. They were watching something recently that, you know, they had heard was pretty innocent. Oh, it's the new, I think some of y'all probably even seen it, the new Christopher Robin movie. And my kids watched the first 5 minutes and said, this is dark. I'm not watching it, and they've turned it off. Now that was their impression. Maybe not everybody got that, but my children felt something from it and turned it off. Amen. If you feel something, turn it off. If the Holy Spirit says you're okay, you can handle it, there's a message in it for you, I'm going to speak to you through it, you have to listen to the Holy Spirit.
Now, I said something earlier, I hope you caught it. Movies affect Kim differently than they affect me. Her gifting is different. Her wiring is different. My gifting is different. What bothers her doesn't bother me. What bothers Michael may not bother Jim. But what we have to be aware of is how the enemy uses him. Because I kid you not, they are encoding so much in movies nowadays. We went to watch, what was that girl's movie, the singing thing?
Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect 3. And we're sitting there watching the trailers, and we were with a group of about 8 or 9 people. And this one trailer comes on, and it caught my attention when it said, we're talking about folding time and space. Oh, you're going to teach me how to do a portal. Now that trailer was only about 2 minutes long. Out of that 2 minutes, there was only 3 of us in the group that saw the same thing. One of the people got up and said, I've been sitting here for an hour, I gotta go to the bathroom. It's that kind of thing that we're really seeing, but it's all about our spiritual nature. You're gonna hear things here you don't hear in the normal church. I mean, I grew up Baptist and they didn't teach me anything about this. The church out there today isn't talking about these things because they don't want to get into that realm. But as Winning Hearts, we have to be aware of how the enemy's affecting us. I mean, I watched a movie one time, and I just tell you, it's a Van Diesel movie. It's called The Last Witch Hunter. True spells, true magic, true things in it. But they're putting it out there because they want it to be dumbed down, numbed down, overlooked, put aside, taken as, oh, it's just a movie.
And so I don't have to steal his.
So you're gonna
I don't steal Jan's. No, I really want to tell this story because it's somebody that I love and adore. Her child started getting a hold of this trance music. And it's music that's out there that allows you to get into a trance-like state and get out and travel in the spirit. I'm just telling you guys, our kids now have an easier ability to get out there than we did. God's made our children that way on purpose. It's the time that we live in. But they're easier to trance than we were, easier to get into God in spiritual things. And this son got into some trance music, and she had been trying to get him to not listen to it, and he wouldn't listen, and he just was determined to listen to it. And he got stuck out there, out of his body, and was freaking out. When he finally found his way back, he was like cold sweat, heart stop, kind of. I mean, he was freaked out. And Tony could probably share more, but it was bad. And he's just one of many. But that music is out there. So that's some of the stuff you have to be very careful of.
The trailer that I was talking about when I went to see Wolverine was called The Conjuring. It was about a young boy, a young child who had left his body and the demons were taking it over. That's what it was. I mean, that's the demonic that was coming off of him. But with that, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. If Jesus shows up, the angelic shows up, and there's a reason for you to go, that's fine, it's safe.
Make sure it's the right angel.
But I had a guy call me a couple of years ago. Is it okay just to go out and walk around the Spirit all day? Number one, why do you want to do that? Number two, who's taking you? Number three, who's watching over your soul? When I asked him those questions, he had no answers. But it's a part of gifting. If we understood the statement Jesus made, and you will do greater than I. If we understood that one sentence right there, we'd see what the enemy's doing in our children today. I mean, some of these TV shows, my God, the stuff they put on TV, the witch sisters, and they do real spells. I mean, Harry Potter is straight out of the book of Satan spells. I mean, it's the reality is they're trying to reach more than we are, and they're using media.
There's a hotline through Harry Potter that you can call. A kid can call and learn how to be a witch. They'll teach you on the phone. And so let me land this just to say, we're not trying to get you into fear. A spirit of fear is also a spirit of, that's a demonic spirit too. So we don't want you to get into fear. That's why I said ask the Holy Spirit, because what may feel right to you, somebody else may be more sensitive about that. So we don't want to get in fear where we're afraid to do anything. Sometimes we'll sit and try to watch a movie with the kids. We may turn it off, but we may go, I see something in this where somebody else may not. Now, a friend of mine likes to go see movies, and we pray about everything we go see. If we don't feel like it's okay, we'll watch the trailers. If we get something bad out of it, we don't go see it. But this person, every time I take them to any movie, even though it's perfectly pure and clean, they're sitting there going, and I'm like, and I'll look and go, shh. And then there's the whole movie, and people are looking at me like, what is going on? And I'm like, will you just ease up? It's okay. You don't have to sit there and pray in tongues the whole time. That's a spirit of fear. So we don't want to get into that either. We just have to learn to trust the Lord. And I'm serious. You have no idea. But we just have to learn to hear from Him and trust Him. So I'm landing the plane, it's kind of late, the kids are still over there getting splattered with paint, or they would have been here, but Kim had something she kind of wanted to do just at the end here.
Well, I just wanted to, and I'm going to open this question up. And I felt like the Holy Spirit told me as I was sitting there, this was not on the plan, but some signs, you might have a rider on your bus. You want to have some signs? You have a habitual thing you can't stop. Something keeps happening, you're cycling, and you just can't stop. Probably got a rider. Something, if you can't stop on your own with the Lord, there's a reason, okay?
Includes addictions.
Addictions, anything, any kind of thing you're trying to stop and you can't stop. There's probably a reason. An unusually strong response to a situation, probably have a rider. Meaning, somebody says something, you way overreact. It's probably attached to a part that's trying to help and save and fix. But it's going to have a rider, because you wouldn't respond so strongly otherwise. If you have a child who, I'm just thinking of some of the things I've seen, you take something from them and they overreact. I saw somebody try to take a video game from this child. The child went into a complete screaming fit. They've got an addictive problem here that needs to be broken. I know when our children were little, one of our children was really addicted to screens. It could be a TV, a video, any kind of screen, computer. We had to just shut all screens from that child for a season because they couldn't get away from the screen. They were addicted to the screen. If they have games, they can't stop playing. You know, if you find yourself, even Tony gave me a hard time one time about being addicted to this game, so I threw it off my machine. I threw it away. Because if there's a chance I want it out of there. So anytime it's out of control, those are some signs. You guys might have more.
And just a basic question. What is sin? Anybody?
That's open-ended question.
Missing the mark? What if we add anything that takes us away from God's destiny and plan for our lives? What if we call that sin? Because really that's all this is. It's the enemy's way to get us off our purpose, off our destiny, off of our identity, off of Him. You know, any of these things, call them sin. Because that's really what it boils down to, taking us away from Jesus. So as long as we keep in mind anything in moderation, understanding that we do have a lie-based thinking because it's just the way it's worked, you know, but He is the one that can restore everything. He's given us ways, tools, models to help with addictions, with personal issues, with cycles. And it's just a form of ministry that He created to help us. He knew what we were going to need before we needed it, so He put things in place. You know, when we talk about deliverance, we don't see the head spinning, turning blue, bouncing off the floor. It's not like that. I sometimes wish it would be. It'd be more fun sometimes, but...
I'd be checking stage left.
But I tell you, we have fun doing deliverance because of what we see the Lord do in the people's lives.
Amen.
When they come back to us and have never been able to keep a job for more than 4 months, when they've not been able to live on their own ever in their 40, when they have situations in life that totally change, it's worth it. It's worth it. You know, He didn't say we had to just sit and wait on Him. There's work in the process of getting to Him. And some of the work is easy and some of the work is hard. But it's about how much do you want Him in your life? What are you willing to get rid of?
The root issue, there's always that foothold. But yeah, that definitely happens too. So it can go both ways. But anyway.
Well, we're out of time. We're going to ask for Q&A. So here's what I would like for y'all to do. If you have questions, would you shoot me an email and maybe we'll do a third just answering questions. If there's questions, there may not be any, but if you have questions, we'll take them later. It's already 9:25, and so I know we have to release folks for kids and things.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Jan might throw me under the bus for this, but if I felt like what the Holy Spirit told me to offer anybody who wants to, that wants to come to the front, everybody else is free to leave, but if you want to do a generation-breaking, repeat after me prayer, come up to the front, we'll do it with you before you leave, okay? But otherwise, that's all we have.
Thank you guys for listening.